present. The committee meets today pursuant to notice to consider HR 5891, the Retirement Improvement and Savings Enhancement Act, or RISE Act. The chair announces that any request for recorded votes may be rolled pursuant to Clause 2, Rule 11 of the Rules of the House of Representatives and Committee Rule 14B. Pursuant to House Rule 11, Clause 1, the chair may recess the committee at any point. While the roll call is not necessary to establish a quorum in official proceedings conducted remotely or with remote participation, the committee has made it a practice whenever there's an official proceeding with remote participation for the clerk to call the roll to help make clear who is actually present at the start of the proceeding. Members should say their name before announcing that they are present. This helps the clerk and also helps those watching the platform and the live stream who may be experiencing a few seconds delay. So I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Grijalva. Mr. Courtney.
Courtney here.
Mr. Sablon.
Sablon here.
Ms. Wilson. Ms. Bonamici. Mr. Takano.
Very emotional.
Wilson here.
A lot to unpack there. He used words like
There's a radio.
you pushed.
Ms. Adams.
Adams present.
Mr. DeSaulnier.
DeSaulnier here.
Mr. Norcross.
Norcross here.
Ms. Jayapal.
Jayapal's here.
Mr. Morelli. Ms. Wild.
Oh,
Mr. Morelli is here. Okay.
Mr. Morelli's here. I apologize. I was searching for my mute button.
No problem. Ms. Wild. Mrs. McBath.
McBath here.
Mrs. Hayes. Mr. Levin.
Levin is here.
Ms. Omar. Ms. Stevens.
Stevens is here.
Ms. Leisure Fernandez.
Leisure Fernandez is here.
I'm sorry, Congresswoman Hayes is here as well.
Mr. Jones. Ms. Manning.
Here.
Mr. Mervan.
Mervan is here.
Mr. Bowman. Mr. Pocan. Mr. Castro. Ms. Cheryl. Mr. Yarmouth.
Yarmouth is present.
Mr. Espaillat.
Espaillat here.
Mr. Mfume. Ranking Member Fox.
Fox is here.
Mr. Wilson. Mr. Thompson.
Thompson is present.
Mr. Wahlberg.
Wahlberg is present.
Mr. Grothman.
Here.
Ms. Stefanik.
Stefanik present.
Mr. Allen.
Allen present.
Mr. Banks. Mr. Calmer. Mr. Fulcher.
Fulcher's here.
Mr. Keller.
Keller is here.
Mr. Murphy. Mrs. Miller Meeks.
Miller Meeks here.
Mr. Owen.
Owen's here.
Mr. Good. Mrs. McLean.
McLean is here.
Mrs. Harshbarger.
Hirschberger here.
Mrs. Miller.
Miller here.
Mrs. Sparks. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald here.
Mr. Cawthorn,
Good is here, by the way, sorry.
Mrs. Steele,
Still here.
Ms. Ledlow, okay, and this concludes the roll call, Mr. Chairman.
May I be recorded as present, please? Rep. Wild.
And Murphy is here also, please.
Is Representative Wilson recorded? Frederica Wilson. We have two Wilsons.
Mr. Chairman, yes, Ms. Wilson is recorded as present.
But there's only one Frederica.
And you got Wild, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do have Ms. Wild as present.
Thank you.
And you have Murphy, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Murphy is recorded as present.
Okay. Anyone else seek to be recorded? Thank you. Thank you. Now, this is a remote markup pursuant to House Resolution 8 and the regulations there too. All microphones will be kept muted to avoid unnecessary background noise. Members are responsible for unmuting themselves when they're recognized to speak or when they wish to seek recognition. I also ask members to please identify themselves before they speak. Members shall be considered present in the proceeding when they are visible on camera, and they shall be considered not present when they're not visible on camera. The only exception to this is if they're experiencing technical difficulty, and inform the committee staff of such difficulty. However, members must be visible on camera to count toward a quorum and to vote, and there's no exception to this. Moreover, there is a need for a verbal vote so the clerk and the official reporter or stenographer can hear it. A thumbs up or a thumbs down without a verbal vote will not suffice. If any member experiences technical difficulties during the hearing, you should stay connected to the platform, make sure you are muted, and use your phone to immediately call the committee's IT director whose number was provided in advance. Should the chair experience technical difficulty or need to step away, another majority member of the committee is hereby authorized to assume the gavel in the chair's absence. This is an entirely remote markup, and as such, the committee's hearing room is officially closed. Members who choose to sit with their individual devices in the hearing room must wear headphones to avoid feedback, echoes, and distortion resulting from more than one person on the software platform sitting in the same room. Members are also expected to adhere to social distancing and safe healthcare guidelines, including the use of masks, hand sanitizer, and wiping down the areas both before and after their presence in the committee room. The amendments must be submitted electronically to the amendment repository pursuant to the instructions in the notice of amendment process that was distributed to all committee officers by the clerk with the markup notice. Amendments must be submitted to the repository before they are offered at the markup. In order to ensure that the committee's 5-minute rule is adhered to, staff will be keeping track of time using a digital timer. The timer will appear in its own thumbnail picture and will be named 001_timer. There will be no 1 minute remaining warning, but members asked to wrap up promptly when their time has expired. I now recognize myself to make an opening statement. Today, the committee is marking up the Retirement Improvement and Savings Enhancement Act, or RISE Act, bipartisan legislation to help more Americans prepare and save for retirement. Both Democrats and Republicans in Congress agree that workers in this country deserve to retire with security. Regrettably, far too many older Americans are working later in their lives and still relying on their next paycheck to make ends meet. Roughly 55 million people nationwide do not have access to retirement benefits through their employer. The Education Labor Committee has important jurisdiction over employer-sponsored retirement plans. This is why we discussed the bipartisan Secure Act 2.0 during our Help Subcommittee hearing in June. This legislation, which the Ways and Means Committee approved this spring, would help strengthen our nation's retirement security, and it includes several provisions within the committee's jurisdiction. Over the last few weeks, the committee worked closely with the ranking member to shape these provisions into bipartisan legislation before us today, and I want to thank her and her staff for partnering with us. The RISE Act, which includes several provisions from committee members, makes meaningful improvements to our retirement system. These changes include creating an online retirement lost and found database at the Department of Labor to help workers locate their hard-earned retirement savings as they move from job to job. According to the GAO, more than 25 million people who have changed jobs between 2004 and 2014 left behind one or more retirement accounts. The bill also clarifies rules regarding the recovery of inadvertent overpayments to minimize hardships for retirees. It requires the Department of Labor to review guidance from the mid-1990s regarding pension risk transfers, and it expands opportunities for our nation's roughly 25 million part-time workers to join retirement savings plans. To be clear, the RISE Act is not the final word in our committee's commitment to improving and expanding access to secure retirement. I know our committee members will have additional ideas, and we will continue working with them in the months ahead. In the meanwhile, the RISE Act would take a key step in the right direction. Most importantly, the bill offers us an opportunity to send a message to workers and retirees across the country that their retirement security is a critical priority for every member of the Education and Labor Committee. So I want to thank Dr. Fox, Mr. DeSaulnier, and Mr. Allen for working together to create this bipartisan legislation, and I urge all members to support the bill and help America's workers access the retirement they deserve. I'm now pleased to yield to the distinguished ranking member from North Carolina, Dr. Fox, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your good comments. HR 5891, or the RISE Act, is a targeted and balanced bill meant to improve our retirement system. Through this bipartisan effort, committee Republicans and Democrats are uniting to make the future of retirees more secure. Retirement policy is an important matter that the Education and Labor Committee is uniquely qualified to handle, and the committee has a long history of bipartisan collaboration in this area. I'm an original co-sponsor of this legislation and am confident it will continue to enjoy bipartisan support as it makes its way out of this committee. HR 5891 modernizes our country's retirement laws. Our economy has evolved, and so has the way Americans plan for retirement. Neither employers nor employee benefit plans fit into the same cookie-cutter policies they did when the Employment Retirement Income Security Act of 1974, ERISA, was first enacted. HR 5891 includes much-needed reforms that will benefit both our country's workforce and job creators. Allowing small employers to band together to form multiple employer plans, or MEPs, was one of the most important provisions in the Secure Act, bipartisan retirement legislation passed by Congress in 2019. HR 5891 builds on current law allowing nonprofits, charities, and educational institutions to join MEPs. The more access Americans have to retirement plans, the better individuals working for small businesses or nonprofits the better individuals working for small businesses or nonprofits should not be excluded from the ability to save for retirement. HR 5891 also establishes a retirement savings lost and found database, as the chairman said. When Americans put their hard-earned money into retirement savings, they should have recourse for finding those accounts, especially years down the road as they move from job to job. The RISE Act increases the dollar threshold on small retirement accounts that employers can roll over into IRAs for former employees. This amount has not been updated since 1997. It's long past time. This will significantly decrease small businesses' liability and the cost of administering retirement plans. This legislation also lifts a restriction that prohibited employers from offering small financial incentives, such as gift cards, to employees for participating in a retirement plan. We should use every tool to encourage more Americans to start saving for retirement. And we all know you catch more flies with honey. In the same vein, an effective way to increase access to employer-sponsored plans is to reduce the cost and regulatory burden on job creators providing retirement benefits. HR 5891 makes a concerted effort to do just that. The bill removes unnecessary disclosure requirements and ensures that unenrolled participants are made aware of their ability to participate. The bill directs the Department of Labor to review the complex maze of reporting and disclosure regulations to make them easier to comply with and easier for participants to understand. It streamlines the collection of contributions to pooled employer plans, and it updates benchmarking guidelines to accommodate a broader selection of plan investments. Finally, the RISE Act expands access to retirement accounts for part-time workers and will allow more Americans to build secure futures. HR 5891 has garnered bipartisan support because it improves current law and introduces incentives for workers to put money toward retirement savings voluntarily. This is crucial for the long-term financial health of American workers and families and for the future economic health of the nation. Earlier this year, the Ways and Means Committee reported HR 2954, another bipartisan retirement bill that contains many of the same provisions as the bill we're considering today. It's my understanding that HR 2954 was carefully crafted to be deficit neutral, which is an important feature of the bill. The RISE Act, in addition to including important retirement policy provisions, is meant to assert the Committee on Education and Labor's important jurisdiction over the ERISA provisions of Secure 2.0 and to wed these changes with HR 2954 ahead of potential consideration on the House floor. Before the House considers any related retirement legislation, including the provisions of HR 5891, Education and Labor Committee Republicans will insist that such legislation is deficit neutral. Mr. Chairman, again, thank you for your dedication to reaching a bipartisan agreement on this important legislation. Retirement legislation has long been an area of bipartisan cooperation and agreement, and I'm pleased to see that tradition continue with HR 5891. With that, I urge my colleagues to support this bipartisan bill, and I yield back.
Thank you for your comments. And when the bill gets to the floor, it will be combined with the Secure Act, which has significant revenue raisers in it. So the bill will at least be revenue neutral, if not a net revenue raiser, so will clearly be paid for. Without objection, all members who wish to insert written opening statements into the record may do so by submitting them to the committee clerk electronically by the end of the day. House rules require a copy of the measure be made available to members of the public at least 24 hours in advance. This was done. And so we'll proceed to the consideration of the bill, HR 5891, for amendment. The bill was circulated in advance. The clerk shall designate the bill.
HR 5891 to improve and enhance retirement savings and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. And without objection, the bill will be considered as read and open for amendment at any point, and any amendment offered shall be considered as read. Now recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Morelli, to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The committee clerk shall designate the amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recognize.
Just a minute. The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to HR 5891 offered by Mr. Morelli of New York. Identifier RISE_ANS.
Without objection, as I said, the amendment will be considered as original text, open to amendment at any point. The amendment in nature substitute was distributed electronically, and now I recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Morelli, for 5 minutes to explain the amendment in nature of a substitute.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment in the nature of substitute makes one substantive change to the underlying bill. It adds of 2021 to the short title of the bill. But I would like to use this time, if I may, to make 3 brief points about what I think is an important piece of bipartisan legislation, which I'm proud to support. First, as a former chair of the New York State Assembly Insurance Committee, I believe one of the most important things lawmakers can do is help workers achieve a secure retirement. And I've spent much of my career at the state level, and now that I'm privileged to serve in Congress at the federal level, working to make that a reality. One of the reasons I wanted to serve on the Educational Labor Committee is because we have jurisdiction over employer-sponsored retirement plans. These plans cover more than 100 million Americans who get up and go to work each day, set aside a portion of their paycheck so that they can eventually retire with dignity. So for decades, this committee has been the hub of retirement security policy and oversight in the entire Congress. And today's markup represents a continuation of such efforts, and I'm proud to be a part of it. Second, I want to commend my colleagues for this thoughtful bipartisan product. It's important that we show the country that Congress can still work together to ensure that all people can retire comfortably and reap the rewards of years of hard work. So I want to recognize you, Chairman Scott and Ranking Member Fox. I also want to particularly highlight the leadership, as you did, Mr. Chairman, in your opening remarks, of the chair and ranking members of the Help Subcommittee, Congressman DeSaulnier and Allen. I have the pleasure of serving on the Help Subcommittee, and in June, as I think you indicated, Mr. Chairman, we held a legislative hearing on the Ways and Means Committee Secure Act 2.0 because it included provisions in our committee jurisdiction. Those provisions comprise the bulk of the RISE Act being marked up today. And during the hearing, both Chairman DeSaulnier and Ranking Member Allen set a constructive tone and expressed a sincere willingness to work together. And clearly that Help Subcommittee hearing paved the way for the bipartisan RISE Act and today's markup. And I congratulate them both, as well as you, Mr. Chair, and the ranking member. Finally, as you both have stated, the RISE Act includes a number of important provisions that would improve Americans' retirement security. The bill ensures workers who may have understandably lost track of their retirement plans as they move from job to job, or if the company they work for moved or changed its name, can benefit from a centralized searchable database of the Department of Labor to help them track down those savings. The ranking member made mention of that. Part-time workers are able to participate in their employer-sponsored retirement plans, which is particularly helpful to women in the workforce who are working part-time. Retirees who receive an inadvertent overpayment for the retirement plan would no longer be subjected to predatory recoupment practices. Employers are able to offer workers small financial incentives, such as low-dollar gift cards, to incentivize participation in retirement plans. Many of the RISE Act's provisions have been long-standing objectives for so many of us on this committee, and I'm proud to be able to help deliver this important victory for workers around the country and applaud the work of this committee and the subcommittee. And I want to thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for recognizing me to offer the amendment in the nature of a substitute. I urge my colleagues to support it, and I yield back the balance of my time, sir.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to be recognized to speak on the amendment? The gentleman from Georgia, the distinguished ranking member of the Help Subcommittee, Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for yielding. The RISE Act is a chance for Republicans and Democrats to come together in support of legislation that will help Americans prepare for their future. As a ranking member Fox stated earlier, this committee has a long history of supporting bipartisan measures that address the financial needs of American workers and retirees. As recently as 2019, Congress enacted the Secure Act, which opened the door for small businesses to participate in multiple employer plans. I am proud to be a part of this decades-long effort to modernize our nation's retirement system so that more Americans have the opportunity to retire with peace of mind. H.R. 5891 is an important step forward in updating our nation's retirement laws. By building on the Secure Act, this legislation lowers the cost of administering retirement accounts for small businesses, including charities and nonprofits, and allows businesses to offer their employees more incentives for participating in the plan. Everyone wants to retire knowing their finances are secure. With this goal in mind, millions of Americans diligently put money aside for retirement every paycheck. Yet, with the rising cost of living and constraints imposed because of outdated laws and regulations, Many Americans may not be adequately prepared for retirement. Private retirement plans are an invaluable asset to both workers and employers. They help employees save for their future and help employers with recruitment and retention. But in many cases, outdated laws and regulations make these plans extremely expensive to administer. In fact, many of the regulations governing these plans haven't been updated in decades. Retirement savings have improved since Congress enacted the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, or ERISA, in 1974, the landmark retirement law that this committee oversees. According to the Department of Labor, as of 2019, there were 733,700 private pension plans covering 141.9 million participants, of which 98.1 million are actively participating in and contributing to their plan. However, more work needs to be done to help Americans save for retirement. By 2030, Americans 65 and older will make up 20% of our population. Preparing for an entire generation to retire in less than 10 years requires significantly modernizing our retirement system. Our economy looks very different than when ERISA was enacted in 1974, and our retirement laws should reflect this reality. Having owned a small business myself, I know how overly restrictive federal regulations can make it difficult and costly to navigate federal law. Many small business owners believe it's easier to stay away from federal programs that involve navigating the bureaucracy, the high cost, and the regulatory burdens. If we want to get more employers to offer retirement plans, we must reduce the risk and increase the incentives. We can do this by cutting red tape. Getting more Americans to save for retirement requires streamlining and simplifying the rules of the road. And that is what we're able to accomplish with this legislation that we're considering here today. I would like to thank Chairman Scott and also Chairman of our subcommittee, Chairman DeSagne, for their willingness to work across the aisle and negotiate this important piece of legislation. The goal of our retirement policy should be to empower Americans to self-sufficient and financial stable and stability and make it easier for Americans to save for their retirement. I'm proud to co-introduce the RISE Act to do just that. And I look forward to working with members on this committee to get it across the finish line. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does anyone else seek recognition? Gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word.
Today, we're 5 minutes.
Thank you. Today, we're discussing the RISE Act, a bill that makes critical improvements to our nation's retirement system to ensure that all Americans can access a safe and secure retirement. Too many workers face difficulty saving for retirement. Currently, more than 55 million Americans do not have access to retirement benefits through their employer, with nearly 35% of women having no retirement savings compared to just 15% of men. The RISE Act includes practical measures to ensure a stronger and more inclusive retirement system is available for all workers and employers. I'm pleased to see my bill, the Improving Part-Time Workers' Access to Retirement Act, included in this critical piece of legislation. This provision will make it easier for long-term part-time workers to access retirement by decreasing the amount of time they are required to work for their employer in order to participate in their 401k plan from 3 years to 2 years. This will have a particular impact on the ability of low-wage workers and women to be able to save for retirement. The RISE Act also includes measures that will make it easier for employees to keep track of their savings as they transfer jobs, incentivize workers' participation in retirement plans, and simplify reporting and disclosure requirements. These are bipartisan and common sense provisions that will better serve workers and employers across our country. I stand in strong support of this legislation, and I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of the RISE Act, and I yield back.
Thank you. The next person I have on my list is Mr. Wahlberg and then Mr. Norcross, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Wahlberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you to Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Fox, and Representative Desaulnier and Allen for bringing the Retirement Improvement and Savings Enhancement RISE Act before the committee today. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, by 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be of retirement age. As an entire generation moves closer to retirement, and as retirement needs of all workers continue to evolve, we must ensure our laws are up to date to ensure Americans can achieve their retirement goals. Private retirement and pension plans are an important aspect of our employer-sponsored benefit system because they enable employers to recruit and retain employees for good paying jobs and help workers successfully save for retirement. But employers need to be equipped with up-to-date rules and guidance that make it easier to offer their employees retirement benefits. Last Congress, we passed the SECURE Act, which made significant improvements to our nation's retirement policies. But there's still more work to be done. With the RISE Act, we're building on the work of SECURE Act to ensure Americans have the resources they need to retire with dignity. I would like to highlight one section of this bill, Section 3, the Retirement Plan Modernization Act, and thank the committee for its inclusion. My good friend and colleague, Representative Sablon, and I have long championed this legislation, which will reduce administrative costs for employers sponsoring employee retirement plans. Under current law, automatic IRA rollovers occur if a participant is no longer employed by the employer sponsoring the retirement plan and their balance is under $5,000. The ability to roll these small benefit amounts into an IRA reduces costs both for employers and active employee plan participants. Congress has periodically adjusted the limit over the years to reflect increasing cost of administration. However, the current $5,000 limit has not been touched in 24 years, and it's long overdue for an update. Often businesses will cite limited financial resources as a key reason for not offering retirement benefits. The Retirement Plan Modernization Act would increase the limit from $5,000 to $7,000, which would ease the administrative burden on employers, especially small businesses, enabling more small businesses to offer retirement benefits and ensure employees are not needlessly paying higher fees. The policies contained within the RISE Act will expand opportunities to save for retirement by enhancing access to and features of workplace retirement plans. There is still more work to be done, and I hope this committee will continue the long history of bipartisanship on retirement policies as we work to resolve issues related to electronic delivery and explore ways to further address the retirement income gap. Last Congress, Representative Norcross and I introduced the LIFE Act, which would enable greater use of guaranteed lifetime income products as part of the benefit plans. So there are many more proposals for this committee to consider, and I look forward to doing that in a bipartisan way. I look forward to supporting the RISE Act today and continuing our work on promoting greater retirement security in the future, and I yield back.
Thank you. Gentleman's time has expired. Next I have is Mr. Norcross, and I don't have anyone else on the Republican side. So if there is, please speak up. If not, Ms. Jayapal from Washington will be next. Mr. Norcross, gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Norcross.
I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I applaud this committee for addressing the retirement crisis in a bipartisan manner. This market shows that we can work to address one of the most important issues facing our country. When I talk to seniors, when I talk to middle-aged, time after time, they worry about not having enough money when they retire. You work all your life, you want that golden nest egg so you can retire with dignity. This markup advances a number of those key provisions that will help working men and women save for retirement, but we have more work to do. As you know, I started my career as an electrician, and to this day, I still have those retirement plans, that pension that I started with as a young apprentice. But lifetime income is not a reality for most Americans anymore. In fact, in the US, those receiving pensions have dropped from 38% in 1980 to 20% in just a couple of years ago. That's a dramatic drop that we need to help address. We've heard time and time again, main concern retirees will outlive their retirement savings. We've been working with Rick Wahlberg on a proposal that will help workers have access to lifetime income. We know that annuities are an alternative way in which a retiree can save with a guaranteed monthly income for retirement. A bipartisan lifetime income for employees act would encourage the use of annuities by allowing plan fiduciaries to make a default investment arrangement in annuity contracts. Our bill will allow up to 50% of the total account value after rebalancing to be placed into an annuity that provides lifetime income. Based on a 2006 law, the Department of Labor issued regulations requiring default investment arrangements to meet certain requirements. However, these regulations do not allow the investment in annuities that provide the lifetime income. Despite over 64% of participants are already invested in a QDIA product, that believing that this investment, you get my motorcycle in the background there. This is about that they want lifetime income. That's so important. So I hope this committee will continue this work in a bipartisan manner to help address these very important issues that we talked about and build on the success of both the RISE and the Secure Act. In other words, we're doing this because people want it. And I want to thank you again for bringing this issue up, and I yield back.
Thank you. Next, I have the gentlelady from Washington, Ms. Jayapal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word.
And is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the first time since the pandemic began, some families are shifting from survival mode and finally planning for the future. It is imperative that Congress take action to ensure that future is a bright one by expanding the opportunity to retire to all workers. The bipartisan RISE Act is a significant step in that direction, helping employers enroll more employees in retirement plans and empowering workers to save. Preparing workers for retirement is critical. 4.9 million American seniors, about 1 in 10, are living in poverty today. The number of Americans over 65 will approximately double in the next 40 years. Each and every worker should be able to retire. Longshoremen who perform strenuous, hazardous work in all hours and weather should not have to keep working well into their 60s because they can't afford to retire. Long-haul truck drivers deserve a chance to spend time with their grandchildren after missing dozens of birthdays on the road. Home healthcare aides should be able to go to work with the confidence that they'll be able to afford the same care when they need it. And yet, more than 1 in 4 workers do not have any retirement savings. Facing additional impediments to saving, such as the racial wealth gap, lower average wages, and other structural barriers, 37% of Black Americans and 42% of Hispanic Americans lack retirement accounts. The COVID-19 pandemic took a grave financial toll on families, forcing many to sacrifice their savings to make ends meet. 21% of workers with retirement accounts have borrowed from those accounts, and 14% made hardship withdrawals. It is critical that we not only help families heal that financial scar, but that they are able to build their finances back better to ensure that when they reach retirement age, they can afford to actually enjoy their retirement. I'm proud to support this bipartisan bill to enable more workers to save for their futures. And I'm grateful to the chairs and the ranking members of both the full committee and the subcommittee. Among countless other workers, here's who this bill will help. About 25 million workers in the United States have part-time jobs. This bill expands the number of part-time workers who can qualify for a direct contribution retirement plan by shortening the length of time that they need to be at a company to open an account. Nonprofit entities employ the 3rd largest share of the US workforce. This bill will expand access to 403B retirement accounts for those workers by enabling nonprofits to set up pooled retirement plans for their employees. And 45 million students and workers in the United States have student loan debt. Under this bill, these workers won't miss out on their employer's retirement contributions because they're bogged down with loan payments and they can't put their own money towards retirement yet. Now, Mr. Chairman, there's still much work to do to ensure that workers can bank on a comfortable retirement. That's why I also support raising Social Security benefit levels above the federal poverty line and increasing the asset limit and indexing it to inflation going forward. That's also why I support the PRO Act, which would lower many of the barriers to workers organizing for better paying benefits, including retirement benefits. And that's why I voted to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour so that workers can worry less about next month's expenses and start thinking about their retirement. And that's why I co-sponsored the Empowers Act, which would give workers a voice in how their retirement plans are managed. Retirement should not be a luxury. No one should have to work past the age that their body and mind can tolerate work. And every person deserves a chance to turn their attention to higher pursuits and spend their time doing what matters most to them without worrying about making ends meet. This bipartisan RISE Act will help make that possible for more people, and I'm proud to support it. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The speakers I have remaining are Wild, Mervan, Wilson of Florida, Levin, and Adams. If any Republican members wish to seek recognition, either to use the raise hand function or to just speak up, and you'll be recognized. The gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'd like to thank you and Ranking Member Fox for your joint leadership on this bipartisan bill that's under consideration today. In 2019, Congress was able to make saving for retirement easier for workers and employers alike with passage of the Bipartisan Secure Act. And I'm proud to continue that work this year in our committee to give more workers the tools to save, employers more options to offer retirement benefits, and more information to savers and retirees on their benefits. I support the bill under consideration today, the Retirement Improvement and Savings Enhancement Act, or otherwise known as the RISE Act, which builds on some provisions from the Secure Act and addresses further needs. Specifically, this bill builds on a popular provision for small businesses that was contained in the Secure Act by allowing similar small nonprofit employers to offer 403B savings plans through multiple or pooled employer plans, sharing and reducing administrative costs for employers while making it easier for workers to save. It also sets up a searchable lost and found portal for Americans to track down their retirement savings assets that were accrued at past employers, making sure that people can access all their money and ensuring that their personal information remains secure. And we know that workers and employers alike want it to be easier to save for their future and to retire with financial peace of mind. The Bipartisan RISE Act will bring that reality to more Americans, and I am very proud to advance it today. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Mervan.
Chairman, I seek recognition to streak the last word.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
I want to thank the chairman and the ranking member Fox for your bipartisan work on this piece of legislation. I also want to take a quick moment to thank the chairman and the committee staff for including in the RISE Act legislation. I have introduced the Pension Risk Transfer Accountability Act. Throughout my career, I have been an adamant supporter of our unions and labor organizations because they have led the way to create fair wages, safe workplaces, and sound retirements. All of our workers should have the security and peace of mind from a strong pension. I'm greatly concerned about the recent increases in pension risk transfers and believe it is important for the Department of Labor to officially assess and report on these developments. A promise made should be a promise kept to all of our workers and retirees. I thank the chairman again for the time and his leadership on this legislation. And again, I thank him for including this important provision. With that, I yield back my time.
Thank you. Next is the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Wilson. Ms. Wilson with us?
Yes,
Yep.
Ms. Wilson is
Okay.
with. I move to strike the last word. Thank you.
Gentlelady's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Scott and Ranking Member Fox, Health Subcommittee Chair DeSanya, and Health Subcommittee Ranking Member Allen for your work on this important issue. I'm proud to support the RISE Act, which will help ensure that American workers receive the hard-earned retirement benefits they are entitled to. After years of service and hard work in their chosen careers, Americans deserve a secure retirement and the right to access their benefits without hassle or unwanted surprises. Florida is home to the largest population of retirees in the country. So this issue is of great importance to my state and my constituents. This bill contains a number of important provisions that would safeguard retirement plans and improve how both employers and employees interact with them. To help Americans access benefits accrued while working for past employers, including for companies that may longer exist under the same name or in the same location, the RISE Act would establish a national database to help them identify and contact their former employers. The bill also contains several provisions that will cut down on predatory behavior and protect retirees, including when an individual has inadvertently received larger payments than they are owed and their plan fiduciary seeks to recoup the overpayments. The RISE Act provides fiduciaries with the flexibility to not recover those sums and impose key safeguards if they do choose to do so. It also instructs the Department of Labor to review existing guidelines pertaining to when a plan sponsor transfers pension obligations to an insurance company or private equity firm. These so-called pension risk transfers can leave individuals at risk of losing their entire retirement, their savings, if the insurer or private equity firm goes defunct. Moreover, the RISE Act would help more Americans enroll in plans by cutting down on bureaucratic red tape, allowing employers to offer small incentives like gift cards to participate in plans and expanding eligibility to part-time employees. Taken together, these provisions represent an important step toward ensuring that all Americans can retire with dignity, peace of mind, and financial security. I encourage all of my colleagues to support the ANS and the underlying bill, and I yield back.
Thank you. Next is the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise in support of HR 5891, the Retirement Improvement and Savings Enhancement, or RISE Act. I want to thank you, Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Fox, Help Subcommittee Chair DeSaulnier, and Help Ranking Member Allen for bringing this bill or this markup before us today. One of the most important things we could do in this committee is to help Americans plan for their retirement by ensuring that they have more control and confidence over their retirement accounts with greater transparency and clarity. The RISE Act builds on the success of previous bipartisan reforms by making meaningful but straightforward changes in several retirement policy areas. Among its key provisions are establishing a national online searchable pension database, allowing employers to offer small incentives to encourage participation in workplace retirement plans, and allowing retirees to keep overpayments they may receive from plan fiduciaries. These specific points and more are common sense provisions to help working people, and I applaud Chairman Scott and Ranking Member Fox for your work on this bill. I want to end by saying there's certainly more we can and must do to help Americans gain greater control over their retirement accounts. One area where we ought to do this is in enabling consideration and clarifying rules on environment, social, and governance, or ESG investing. Mr. Chairman, I'm glad that DOL recently announced it was pursuing rulemaking on this subject. Still, I believe Congress has a role in stopping the constant back and forth and ever-changing rules between administrations by passing a sensible law governing sustainable investments. I hope to work with my colleagues to achieve this goal in the coming weeks. I urge all members of this committee to vote for the RISE Act, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. The gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Adams.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I rise in support of the bipartisan RISE Act. My thanks to you, Mr. Chairman, and to the ranking member for working together to bring this bipartisan bill to markup. Retirement is a concern that will be faced by the vast majority of Americans, if not all of us, at some point. And specifically, those concerns often center on whether there are enough funds on which to retire. Retirement funds are all too important, especially now. 18 months or so of the pandemic has certainly impacted retirement savings. For example, individuals who've lost their jobs are reconsidering how to save for their retirement. Another issue individuals are facing is having had to take retirement funds to use for unexpected financial crisis, simply trying to keep the basic necessities of life going, such as paying the rent and paying for groceries. So thoughtful changes to existing law which address the concerns of retirees are indeed a must. Incentivizing participation in retirement plans and increasing transparency through the scope of disclosure will benefit retirees in the long run. So I'm glad to see that this markup has bipartisan support. I certainly want to take this opportunity to thank all of the members who worked on it, all the committees. And I want to urge the members of the committee to continue working on other potential legislation related to concerns about retirement, which we hope that one day we'll all get there. So I hope that such work can be undertaken as well in a bipartisan manner. I do encourage my colleagues to vote yes on the ANS. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Are there other members that wish to speak to the amendment nature of a substitute? If not, we will consider amendments to the amendment nature of a substitute. Does any member wish to offer an amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I just wish to speak quickly to the.
Excuse me, gentleman from California, Mr. Takano, speak to the amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to offer my congratulations to you and the ranking member for this accomplishment. I always want to cheer on when we are able to act in a bipartisan manner, and we couldn't do it for a better issue, which is the retirement security of all Americans. The RISE Act gives Americans, will give Americans another tool and their employers another tool by which we can make financial security within the reach of more and more Americans. So I appreciate the bipartisan work of all the members of this committee, you, Mr. Chairman, all those involved, and congratulations.
Thank you. Is there any other member that wishes to discuss the amendment nature of a substitute? If not, the committee will move to consideration of amendments. Does any member wish to offer an amendment? I wasn't made aware of any amendments, but does any member wish to offer an amendment? If not, the question now occurs on the amendment nature of a substitute as amended. All in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is agreed to. Are there any members on the screen that did not respond to the initial roll call? that wish to be recorded as present?
Mr. Chairman, I wish to be recorded as present.
Mr. Takano? Anyone
Chairman,
else?
please record me as present. This is Congressman Castro.
Mr. Castro?
Mr. Chairman, please record me as present.
Mr. Espiat?
Mr. Chairman, please record me as present.
Ms. Ledlow?
Mr. Chairman, this is Ms. Hayes. I'm not sure how I'm recorded.
I think you were recorded, but clerk will just make sure. Is anyone else that was not recorded initially? Okay.
I'm sorry, do you have McLean recorded?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Ms. McLean is recorded.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Not recorded?
Mr. Chairman, do you have Sparks recorded?
Is Ms. Sparks recorded?
No, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Sparks is not recorded.
Okay, she's present. Is anyone else not recorded on the initial roll call?
Mr. Chairman, how am I recorded?
Who's it, Mr. Banks?
Mr.
Yes.
Banks is not recorded, sir.
Mr. Banks, okay. Is anyone else not recorded in the initial roll call? Okay, there being no other member to speak to the bill, I'll now entertain a motion to report the bill and recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Morelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the Committee on Education and Labor report the bill HR 5891 to the House of Representatives with an amendment in the nature of a substitute and with the recommendation that the amendment be agreed to and the bill as amended do pass.
The question now occurs on reporting HR 5891 as amended to the House with a favorable recommendation. All in favor will say aye.
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 All opposed,
Aye.
no. All opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. HR 5891 is ordered reported to the House of Representatives. The chair notes for the record that a quorum is present and asks unanimous consent
Yes.
that the staff is authorized to make necessary and technical and conforming changes to the bill as amended pursuant to House Rule 11, Clause 2L. I give notice to all members that they have the requisite number of days to file supplemental, minority, additional, or dissenting views. Without objection, so ordered. And without objection, any members who wish to insert materials into the record may do so by submitting them to the committee clerk electronically by the end of the day today. Is there any further business before the committee? I wish everyone, I assume everyone will be recognizing our distinguished veterans tomorrow. So have a happy holiday tomorrow. And if there's no further business before the committee,